Guys, Ben Lee here. Wanted to discuss something with you that we're seeing happening across news media on the internet and on social media, and about how it affects us. There is a change occurring. It's happening subtly and incrementally, but it is happening. And what it has to do with is a discussion around what is the value of content on social media and news media sites. In late January, the Huffington Post sent out an email to all their guest bloggers, making a really important announcement, and that was that they were going to be shutting down their long-standing practice of sourcing free, unpaid work from guest bloggers. This is the model they began with, they continued with for about 13 years, mostly successfully, where they had a small staff of paid writers, but mostly relied on guest bloggers sharing their passions. I've done it. I was a guest blogger on the Huffington Post, and it really relied on the idea that the exposure that you would get through the platform really outweighed any personal value you would make for the piece of writing you were doing. So for instance, I remember when I was producing Margaret Cho's album, we decided to premiere the video for the song on the Huffington Post because you felt like the exposure you're getting was really worthwhile, and we did an interview around it in a story. And this is really the way the model worked. And this is not really about the politics of the Huffington Post, whether you agree or disagree. It was a very smart business move. They're obviously very intelligent people, and it sustained itself very well for a number of years. So if you were a content creator, if you were a journalist, you might decide to share your ideas for free and hoping that the phone would ring with other offers down the line. Now, I found a really interesting quote from a journalism professor named Matthew Hayes, and he wrote this in the Columbia Journalism Review. And he said, "Every year I'm faced with the heartbreaking job of facing a group of young, idealistic journalism students. I urge them not to write for free, even if the site gets a lot of traffic. I repeat the old joke about the artist or writer who died of exposure," right? So this argument was not always accepted by everyone, clearly. And, some of us bought it, those who felt the need for the exposure and the idea that it could help our careers in the long term, but others were opposed from the beginning. And in fact, in 2011, AOL bought the Huffington Post for $315 million. And there was a class action from a group of about 9,000 bloggers who sued the Huffington Post for what they felt was their fair share of a portion of that $315 million. They asked for about 30%. That's what they thought would be fair for their contribution to the site. And the case was tossed out of court. But the seeds were planted for a certain type of discontent for the idea of offering our value for free to sites that were profiting, right? So what you can see is there begins to be a bit of like a rise in the self-esteem of content creators, where we realize that, oh, there's actually real money to be made on these larger platforms, and we should be participants in that. So last month, the Huffington Post brought in a new editor-in-chief called Lydia Polgreen. She started their site about a year ago, but earlier this year she came out with this statement saying the reality is now that we're all constantly putting things up on the internet that someone else is monetizing. Now that there's so much information out there, it makes sense to pay people for their contributions. So there's a pretty radical shift for a major company that was founded on the idea of unpaid content. And what we know about trends in journalism, in culture, is that they begin in the sort of east and west coast in the US, sort of in the intelligentsia. These are where trends are set, and they begin to infiltrate the rest of the country. So this is a huge shift, and it begins for journalists. How does that affect us? When you go to Facebook and you look at you open your page, what's it called? It's called a news feed. The reality is that we get our news primarily from social media now that we curate out of our peers and our contemporaries and our community members. We're actually creating the news for each other. I know for me, when there were fires happening around California, it was actually hard to find a constantly updated local news source. So I really relied on my community on Facebook, posting things that they were hearing, and rumors and warnings and ways to be prepared for the fire. So we are actually the content creators and the news providers within a lot of these social media ecosystems. When you think of someone like Kim Kardashian, If she's proven anything, it's the value of a piece of content, of say a photo of her in a bikini, is massive for these social media platforms. And it's really important to realize that, people latched onto this idea for a while. Ashton Kutcher was the first celebrity, the first person, I think, to reach 1 million followers on Twitter. And as a very smart investor, he went to Twitter and said he believes he should be repaid in some equity in the company. And they laughed him out of the room. But look, it was audacious, but he was tapped into this idea. He's like, I'm bringing value to your site. Where is the monetary value coming back to me? So I think what we're sort of going to see is this movement away from this happening just from journalism to regular people who are contributing content of value on their platforms of their choice, wanting to be compensated. And that does not mean that your drunk uncle, every time he posts an old family photo, should necessarily be paid for that. But if there is content that is being recognized, valued, consumed, and liked by the community, why not? Those posts really should be valued by these platforms. We are all content creators. If the platform is successful, we should be compensated. So whether it's on Steemit or on another platform that we haven't seen yet, this shift is going to happen. We are starting to build self-esteem as content creators. It's almost like factory workers unionizing. We're starting to realize that our content has value and that we don't need to feel satisfied or just privileged to be part of these wonderful platforms that are exposing us in the hope that the phone will ring and someone will offer us a job or someone will offer us to pay us for something. It is valuable already what we are offering. And where the intelligentsia and the media go first, the masses go next. Be aware of this shift. It is happening, and I'm excited to be part of it.